It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And this Feedback Friday, we're actually going to primarily focus on Wellness Wednesday, which is nice. We haven't done that in a while. But there were some comments on Monday's video that I will get to. But I just appreciate the people that were cool about the content this week, because it was a real mood to see all the knee-jerk comments of no censorship and this, of course they are, the Baptists suck, like all that stuff. And in, the middle of that, commenter goes, this is on Wednesday's video, generally Daya agree, I think that was supposed to be disagree, with your take, Leanna. People need to look at their mental well-being if they words can do that to them. Not if their words, if they words. You have persuaded me, commenter, who wrote it and hit send so quickly that you didn't bother to proofread your comment. I believe that you were not completely emotionally compromised there, which is why you had to do that so fast. I live for moments like that. Like, real talk. It is scientifically proven that certain negative emotions register in the brain like physical pain. And human beings can only take so much pain. Anybody who insists that, well, you toughen up, grow a thicker skin, words don't bother me, you are lying to yourself and compromising your mental health. When you believe people should just suck it up, you are not setting boundaries. And that is bad for you. And seriously, take care of that before you end up with a very, very serious condition. Some people wouldn't even bother with a comment like that, but even people that do ridiculous things are human beings. And seriously, part of the mental health problems with men is this false idea that words, if you're doing it right, will never hurt you. And if they do hurt, if you are hurt, that is a sign of a mental health problem. Words shouldn't hurt. Fallacious. We know they do. That's just fact. Grow up. If they hurt, I have a mental health problem. Also not true. Feelings are feedback. And blotting out any recognition of things that sting, you're driving yourself into increased misery. And so, as amused as I was by the irony of a typo-filled comment saying that people shouldn't be emotionally reactive to hearing things they don't like I said, I live for that ironic shit. But yes, there is a person underneath that, and I seriously hope that this person rethinks that for their own sake. So let me do the help support this channel, and then get into it. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or like and subscribe to this channel. All of these things help me out. So with the God of War stuff, there were some interesting comments. There were some douchebag comments, but there always are. But some people asked about the story and, whether I think they're going to change that. The mini games, people said they could take or leave. I agree with you. It is my preference that they keep them in. I will understand if they don't. But I thought about the story, and yes, the original games are much shorter than a fully priced game would be now. And so I thought about this, and I would take content from the two PSP games, Chains of Olympus, and I forget the other one, like the flashbacks with his daughter, and then some of the stuff in Ascension, and put them into a first game remake. Because all that stuff happened before game one, right? And that'd give more content but also not had the story out too much, because Kratos is a man of few words. And having, buddies like he does in the Dad of War games doesn't make sense on that part of his journey where he's essentially a living weapon. So I hope they don't change too much. And all these decisions have been made. Like, we can't influence them. If they've announced it, the story's set. But that's what I do to bring it up to modern standards in terms of playtime. And I wouldn't mind if they didn't do that. Every so often, I like a nice short game. I don't even want to look at how many hours I put into Rogue Trader. I'm still playing it. Oh my God. I pet the dog, guys. I got the pet the dog achievement. I was so excited. Glado let me pet him. So good. So moving on to the cool comments on Wednesday's video, because there's a double empathy gap here. Empathy. Yes, I said that word right. People tend to side in these things. Either one group did nothing wrong, or the other group did nothing wrong, and the other side is just either too sensitive or evil and totally deliberate. And this is wrong and lazy. Grow up. Again. It is documented that, like I said, some people with Tourette syndrome can also be assholes, but the coprolalia is not the same as someone just being an asshole. There is also a lot of comorbidity between that. That means like having more conditions at once. It's very common to also have things like obsessive compulsive disorder when you have Tourette's. And some people have the compulsion to also say horrendous shit. We don't know what causes this, but not giving John Davidson any benefit of the doubt doesn't make things any better. It doesn't solve anything. So I don't see the need to do it. Similarly, going, oh, you shouldn't be so sensitive. One, that's not living in the real world. Two, that doesn't solve anything either. Because that is just why the gatekeeping gets so bad. You can't, you're too sensitive your way through this problem. One, because one could argue you're protesting too much. Stop being so sensitive about other people's perspective on things. That's a really low quality, frankly, immature approach to this, which says more about you than the actual situation. It's lazy, and I stand by that. I stand by that as somebody who tried to tough my way through PTSD and pretend that what was going on internally was not going on, and it didn't take me anywhere good. And so again, I hope for better for these people. Somebody did make a correction that I forgot to mention off the top. I was planning to, but those things where something's wrong as you're saying it, but you can't quite put your finger on what. Well, someone in the comments pointed out what it was. It was a comment about the hostile environment policy for the Windrush scandal. Theresa May was not prime minister at the time. She was home secretary in 2012. But she did introduce the hostile environment policy. So thank you, commenter. That was one of I knew it didn't sound right. So there we go. But people ask me how it should have been handled. Do I think the scenario could have been prevented? For people who don't know, I used to be a television producer. I did live television. I did multi-camera production. So I know a thing or two. Yes, it could have been mitigated, I'll say. There's always issues at every show. People get drunk and brawl in the hallways, and people behave inappropriately, and it's usually handled better than this. And there were a lot of misrepresentations about what I said in some of the comments. And this could be a troll comment, but in case anybody else got this, it is complicated. We're inclusive. However, you need to excuse yourself in order to be accommodating because we cannot accommodate you. Geez Louise, that's just not what I said. And ironically, like right before it, right below it. Now, I mean, the red skull icon on this comment is why I think it might be a troll. But moving on, because the comment below it was the amount of Americans who don't know what Tourette's is surprising to me and disheartening. And okay, that's a big can to crack open. But yes, it is a little surprising that people know so little about conditions like this. And it might be because, back in the 80s and 90s, before the latest kind of be nice to everyone by ignoring problems wave comes through, there were a lot of like jokes about Tourette's and very special episodes of TV shows about Tourette's. And so people generally knew that it existed. And the problem then was that people thought it was just about swearing uncontrollably. They didn't know it because they only showed like the absolute worst kind of it. And so, again, I understand why some people think that there's an element of, well, he must feel these things deep down somewhere in order for them to come. We don't know how this stuff works. And again, I think there's enough evidence of the guy's track record that he swore at the Queen. I guess if you're not English, you don't know why you just don't do that. I mean, unless you're a anti-monarchist, but he's not. It just, I do not believe this is his heart. That being said, I do think, one, it could have been prevented through simple communication. And I say this as somebody who, like I said, I've been on the floor during live or live to tape television. I've also been in the control room, and I've also, I've worked with production trucks as well. And communication solves things going to air because somebody in the truck didn't hear it. Because the audio person, they usually can hear it. They're the ones, focused on going, what's that? Like they're listening for hums, right? So if there had been proper communication, somebody could have flagged that and it wouldn't have gone to air. But talking to people is so important, communication is very important. I have had shoots go horrendously wrong. And I've been the person that was, had things thrown at me, including a chocolate penis once on a television show. That was interesting. I had a Taiwanese beauty snake wrap around my neck during a shoot once. Shit happens. And how you handle it, how you make sure everybody feels like a person. It's a very, very important part of media production that's often overlooked. Now, the fact that they're like, we want everyone to have a dignified experience. That is why I don't buy this. Just don't worry about their mental health. What's wrong with you? You're sensitive. I don't buy that shit, because you can't go out there and say we want everyone to have a dignified experience and then insist that people just have to suck it the fuck up. Like, you can't have it both ways. And the reality is, if you say just suck it up, people won't come. and then you've compromised your awards, you know? I do think that we need to figure out where the line is regarding political speech at these things, because certain things are very complicated for people. And people should be able to go and kind of celebrate excellence in a field without having people grandstand on political causes. And that's why I think that if they want to say it on stage, great. Editing it out discourages the behavior. And, maybe small pins, no outbursts are a way to do it. That has become sort of the standard for anything where protesters are going to show up and shout shit and be disruptive. It's just not going to make it on to TV, guys. But that shows they can do it, right? It showed they had a plan for that. I do think, one, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad if they had not done the boneheaded, we're sorry if you were offended. And this was in the comments, right? The immediate comment should have been, we understand why these words are painful. Because fuck offense. Like I said in the original, who cares if you're offended? Is it causing someone pain? It is right and mature and brave and strong to apologize for pain. Now, okay, this is British culture. Offense is a thing, but it's still, you can do better. It should have been, we apologize to anyone who, felt distress or pain for these words, even though they were not intentional. Just because the receiver had no meaning doesn't mean it has no meaning for you. The speaker, sorry, it had no meaning, doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning for you hearing it. Both sides have to be valid, because if you fuck this up, then no one will tell you why someone's not being invited to something. They just don't want someone there who is just going to be allowed to shout the N-word all the time. This is just common sense. See, this is the thing about being a TV producer. You can't really be a nice person, but you do have to be pragmatic. And the reality of, if we have N-bombs all over the place and don't handle this well, Black people aren't going to come to our show. And, Black people make good art alongside everybody else. We want people to come to our show. When we get the absolute top talent, that benefits us. Therefore, we have to learn how to handle these things better. And it doesn't matter if we think someone is too sensitive. You are aware of the sensitivity and you know the consequences for neglecting it. So be business smart, be professional. Don't go, we want inclusion and dignity for everyone, and then pick sides. You can't. It's not about the good person, bad person, fuck that. It's about consistency and having people realize that you will keep your word. Because more and more with entertainment going the way it is, people will just not deal with people who screw people over. It's too, the minute you have any sort of name for yourself, you can go out and, not be Taylor Swift rich, but you can get by with your own projects in the internet. And so people aren't bending the knee to this bullshit anymore. And so I do think the immediate on-air apology should have been much better. But he probably should have been chaperoned at the dinner as well. Because again, have him come, give him try it again, dignity of risk. But first of all, you need a witness to see what actually happened when there isn't a recording. and for both sides, right? But you also need somebody to go, okay, this is not reasonable accommodation anymore. It is unreasonable to expect people to be okay with this happening multiple times at the night. And yeah, it never should have gone to broadcast. How do we know that? Well, I mean, God, here you get a CRTC complaint upheld against you here. You can't put that language just out there like that. Uh, you'd get complaints that would absolutely be upheld. You know that people have problems with this content, and that is a standard, right? When you're doing like a premium cable thing or anything, like, you put disclaimers off the top, it's different. You have to subscribe to it. You know what you're getting into. A live award show on just regular basic TV, not the same. And this context does matter. So, it never should have aired. Someone absolutely should have talked to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo after the fact. And this is where what I'm saying is, I've said a lot of controversial things to some, but this is where what I'm going to say is going to be controversial. And it's because I have seen a lot of anti-Black racism and it's a specific kind of racism in the media, in that everyone's so afraid of being branded a racist that people don't want to have the follow-up conversation. And as somebody who's been branded a racist by Hassan Piker, well, his people, he dog whistled something, and I had a bunch of his fans calling me a racist. I'd never heard of him before this, but okay. But he called me a white feminist, as if my whiteness has anything to do with my opinions on Mortal Kombat 11. And I'm a ginger, get it right. We're a subset. We are mutants. I'm kidding. And, I say this as somebody who does laugh a lot of things off. And I realize that a lot of the things I laughed off in the past, I shouldn't have. And that's why I sort of come down so hard on people who are just as immature now as I was then. Because it is a marker of immaturity. When you have to lie to yourself and say something doesn't bother you, it makes you less socially adept. Because if you're not connected to your own responses, you can't effectively handle other people's. That's just reality. And why do we want a world where we just tell people, oh, if words bother you, you have problems? I don't want to live in that world. I want to find solutions. I don't like blame. And that's the problem in the fallout with this whole BAFTAs thing. People are looking for blame. And that's pointless. It's about, how do you solve the problem? And the fact that no one talked to Michael B. Jordan or Delroy Lindo, especially Delroy Lindo, but both of them should have been spoken to. And a message from John Davidson, much better than the one he put out publicly, should have been delivered directly to them. If they don't want to see him, fine. I can understand why they wouldn't. But his public apology was not great because, like I said, he showed no empathy for the people that, unintentionally, but he did wrong. Whereas he focused a lot on his own feelings. That's not great crisis communications. But even if he botched it, the BAFTAs should have had someone go and talk to those two men who were, subjected to something humiliating. And that's not right. This should be their year. And they should be able to go to awards celebrating their talents and others without encountering that intentionally or not, you know? Um, and the fact that I suspect, if I had to guess, I don't know, but I suspect a lot of people just will keep calm, carry on, because they didn't want, first of all, to get yelled at. Unfortunately, when you have certain production jobs, part of the job is getting yelled at. I say this as someone who did that job. It's not right. It just is. And there is usually some sort of associate producer or somebody below the executive producer's level who is the person who cleans up these messes. And there was clearly no one to clean up this mess. And I suspect it wasn't because of lack of caring. I suspect that it was because people were sort of shell-shocked. There was no plan for what would happen if this did happen, because dignity of risk was not properly practiced. Because this was predictable. And, because of that, there was no one to go and say, and even if you are shocked, I know, having been in that situation, I do go and I talk to the person who was impacted. It's just a professional thing to do, and go, look, I am so sorry. This was an experiment, and we didn't, one, adequately prepare people to, we probably should have gotten him out of that auditorium at shut the fuck up when he said it to the BAFTA president. Hindsight's 2020, but I would say the important communication is neither of you deserved to hear that. And it was wrong, even if it was unintentional. It's wrong that that word exists. And it's not John Davidson's fault that that is the worst insult out there right now. But it is, and it does exist. And, if there's anything we can do, if there's anything you would like us to do, what would make this better for you? And just show some empathy and compassion, because that's the strong and brave and adult and professional thing to do. The grow a thicker skin, the just say nothing, the you have mental problems if this bothered you. Hot take, it's cowardly. And why do I know it's cowardly? Because every time I have to have a difficult conversation with somebody after something like this, I'm afraid, because some people, fuck you, you're a racist too. Fuck, you knew they were going to do that. Like, you do have to handle people's anger and shame and embarrassment and even a trauma response. And I'm in the, somewhat unique situation of, okay, I've had that trauma response, so I'm a little more, hey, I've been there. I've said similar things, and I feel like it's not an overreaction. It's this weird, like, involuntary blah. But people do it. And if they just need to get that out, it's less hard for me to hear that than it is for them to carry around. Now, usually when people do that, they end up apologizing afterwards and all that stuff. And I do find it funny that the very people who say, people who are bothered by words have mental problems. Well, if you're so strong, if it doesn't bother you, where's the harm in being gracious? This is where this logic falls apart, right? Because if you don't care either way, if sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, there's a reason we don't say that anymore. It's scientifically disproven. But if you are so unaffected, why not just, Let the person be bothered. There's no skin off your nose. You don't need to have that knee jerk of they got a mental problem. Being sensitive is not a mental illness. We have emotions for a reason. And if it doesn't bother you, there's no need to go there. You're actually disproving your claim by having a reaction and stating it so strongly. Because there's multiple steps. There's, hey, having a bad night. There's, wow, they've had some bad experiences, right? Emotional immaturity, to leap to, well, they're mentally ill. You're telling on yourself. You can't handle the negative emotions that come from the history of that word, the N word, and other things. And I mean, there's things I've stopped saying because I meant no harm by it, but it bothered male members of my audience. And if I'm going to do men's content, I don't want men to have to be like scraping themselves off the ceiling the whole time. It's the least I can do. It shows understanding, which means they're going to listen to me more, right? And this is the media. They are awarding excellence in media, and they don't know how to do basic communication this way. Something's very wrong there, because it really was much simpler to get a better result. There was an opportunity to both let people know that, no, it wasn't intentional. And I truly believe it wasn't. I do also believe that people with disabilities, including myself, are accountable for what we do. And we are expected to have good sense and accurate assessment of capabilities, like any other adult. And, I say this as somebody, I'm going to the rheumatologist this week, so I have to fill out this form of, what do you have trouble doing? What's your pain level? It's humbling to have to put in a form that I can't open jars without an assistive device. But it's true. Do sometimes I have trouble doing up buttons? Yeah, it hurts every time. And, I don't even notice it hurts half the time because I got to do it anyway. But it's humbling. And so to me, because I have these things, I have less of an excuse to avoid connecting to the struggles and the difficulties of other people. The other thing we know, based on research, is, again, things get better when there's interest convergence. So the ideal situation here would be for one side to recognize he didn't mean it, for the activist side or the advocate side for Tourette syndrome to be more clear and, like, on the first try, thanks, not the third or the fourth, that yes, people have the right to not want to be around these words. It doesn't matter if they're hurt. It doesn't matter if they're offended. Freedom of speech comes with freedom from speech. And people have the right to not want to hear, a blaze of profanity while they're trying to have a nice time. For whatever reason. No one should feel coerced or guilted into, having an experience that they find that unpleasant, because the first chance they get, they're going to exclude people with that disability. I mean, that's just fact. You gotta meet people with compassion. And for some odd reason, people think compassion is hard. And I actually think shutting yourself off from that compassion is harder in the long term, right? Because if you're denying the humanity of others, every time you do that, you're denying your own humanity. And I know, as somebody who had to just feel weak for a bit, so I could see that I wasn't in PTSD therapy, that the real weakness is running from the acknowledgement that something that you did may have caused other people pain, whether you intended to or not. And you never need to you never need to agree you did it on purpose, right? To have compassion for the fact that the person is upset. And that person then doesn't have the right to do anything they want to you. And I know I say this as somebody who said, yeah, people swore at me and all that stuff. It wasn't right. It's just human. And again, that's why I call bullshit on the people that it's like, you have problems if these words bother you. Because I am fairly resilient that way. They don't, it's not fun, but they don't ruin my day. And so if that's going to solve the problem, I'm going to set limits. Like, I'm not going to allow name calling, like, I understand how you feel. It's not necessary to accuse me of racism, but, I completely understand that you are angry. I have never been in your particular shoes this way, so I'm not going to claim I can, I've never been the target of the N-word. I've been the target of some other words that people give me shit for, going, no, you don't speak to me that way. And that's not, like, for me, like I said, it's not pain, it's fucking respect. Because I've hit a part in my life now where people don't get to talk to me that way. They are removed from my air, And it's amazing how many emotional toddlers are walking around out there who cannot grasp the basic fact that you cannot force people to want to be around you. And you don't have to. There are much better ways where everyone can be happy. And we talk about the mental health crisis and male loneliness and all that stuff, but that's really, I know that was the core for me when things started getting better, is people, might reject me. They might abandon me. They might fuck me over. They lie about me all the time. They exaggerate. They put thoughts in my head I don't have. And that's why I give guys like John Davidson the benefit of the doubt. Because I know people have accused me of meaning things I didn't mean. So why would I do that to him? It's not necessary to say mistakes were made here. And giving other people the benefit of the doubt is powerful, because every time you do that, every time you go, okay, I understand why that was really upsetting for people, instead of going, people who are upset, mental problems, every time you do that, you affirm your right to go, hey, cut it out. Don't talk that way. You want your mother to hear you talking that way? Something like that. You affirm your right to set boundaries every time you respect the boundary of another person. And that gives you a sense of security and a sense that you matter as a human being that I truly believe you cannot get any other way. Any other way is just fake. That's the only way to really believe you have inherent worth and inherent value and the inherent right to say, when I say this is not okay, it stops. There's no shortcuts to this. And so every time somebody pulls that bullshit in my comments, you're outing yourself as having no boundaries. You are declaring to the world that you are a victim, and you are just, a part of you is dying inside. Because if you really believe that people shouldn't be bothered by words, prove it. Let it go. without having to honk like an ill goose with typos in a comment section. Practice what you preach. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Choke. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Like and subscribe to this channel if you like this content. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.